All right, welcome to the 70s.
Thank you, love it. We haven't caught up since Breakpoint. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it's been a while. You guys have been doing great stuff for a while. I want to just start with a quick overview. Give us the 2 minutes on render.
Yeah, I mean, so most people don't understand what rendering is. It's part of the animation process. There's a workflow where you create a model like your kid would in Roblox or Minecraft, and then the conversion of the model from a model into pixels into output is a process called rendering. And that's really the genesis of the Render Network. We were founded by creators for creators to really solve for rendering, to make it fast and affordable. And as that has grown and morphed, it's become so much more than rendering. It's now AI and hopefully soon data generation. But really at its ethos, it's a group of creators who contribute their compute and do some absolutely amazing projects on the network.
Yeah, and so, I mean, for folks who don't entirely understand how this software is used, this is like the difference between why graphics in a movie look 1,000 times better than graphics in a video game.
It's insane to me how much of what we see on the internet is rendered.
Yeah.
And I didn't really truly understand that until I came onto the project. And what's crazy is they're amazing creations created every day. But, we don't actually know what they are. Because the whole ethos about being by creators, for creators, is we want to protect creators in this process. And so for us, we actually have a pretty complex process where we stream our software and the frame to the various nodes on the network so that it's never actually installed. And why that's so important is because we don't want the node operator or us having access to the work being performed.
Right.
So it's amazing. I speak to folks after, and you hear about these stunning projects like on the Vegas Sphere or motion pictures being rendered, and you don't even know. It's astounding to me. Yeah.
So we were actually out in a studio in Oakland shooting the token extensions video, if anyone's seen that. And one of the guys on set was like, "Did you guys just render?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh yeah, I use that for all my projects."
I love it.
And he was like, "It's half the cost of going through any of the rendering farms." And he had no idea it was blockchain powered.
Well, that's our favorite part. For us, it's about onboarding people to fast and affordable rendering, and blockchain is just the means of doing that.
Yeah.
And so most of them come and they pay in fiat, and they never actually realize that underneath the hood, we're using the blockchain in some really innovative ways, and they don't have to. They get this amazing render back in a fraction of the time and cost. And to them, that's the key. That's a product they use regularly and shows true value.
Totally. And I think for folks to understand this too, how many of you were at Breakpoint last year or saw any of the videos? Okay, so that big giant LED wall with the motion animations moving on it, how much would you guess the cost was to render that? Not to someone create it, but just to have the computer output that file. Any guesses? It was about $3,000 every time we needed to output that file. And that was running through a centralized rendering farm that wasn't doing stuff on render, but these are really expensive workloads and jobs to get done, and they take hours to output.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And why it's so important to understand there's a real commercial case behind these. When you look at the various economics on a GPU, the very top return you can make on a GPU today is through rendering. The next tier down is AI inference, and then below that is mining. But there's a real reason for that, being the commercials behind it, the driven industry that fuels a lot of what we see, and is only about to change as we go from 2D to 3D.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the Render Foundation, what its role is, how it kind of came about, and what you do there.
So the foundation came into being at the start of last year. We'd got to a point in the project, we'd founded the network, we'd scaled it up, but we were moving to bringing on other third-party renderers, as well as moving towards third-party AI jobs on the network. And so it was really a transitional point where everything was Octane to, it wasn't only Octane, it also had Redshift, it also has others in the pipeline, Blender and Cycles, their rendering engine being one of them. And then on the AI front, although Otoy, who'd founded the network, are absolute experts on the creator side and the creator workflow. We're not experts on AI inference, and although we use AI heavily in how the rendering process works, it's really not a central part of it. So the concept of going B2B there and bringing on third parties made a ton of sense, right? And because we were doing that, it was really an obvious step to move towards the community taking over the project and it becoming more and more decentralized. And it's been a crazy year and a half of that, starting from really just the thought of a foundation to now a fully fledged team. They're still fairly small. A lot of it is really just community contribution, but the real separation is everything that happens on chain is being covered by what the foundation does. And then if you think about the for-profit side and particularly the creator and rendering side, that's on the Otoy side.
So I want to talk a little bit about the AI side of things because the crypto AI intersection is very much in the buzzword stage. I think it's fair to say. Crypto says AI needs crypto. Right. AI never says it needs crypto, right? Anytime you have a one-way relationship, there's always a question of like, what's really going on here?
Right.
Whether in your personal life or your business life. And so, and I know you're not an engineer, but one of the things that I think we often hear is like, these systems are really hard to train in decentralized ways because the way these neural networks are built out, you kind of need everything in one giant model. So how does that work when you're talking about breaking it up and doing this across a giant distributed cluster?
I love the way you phrased that because it definitely is one way at the moment.
Yeah.
But I can see a path towards elements first, things like inference and fine tuning being very different from training. But I think really the crux for this is going to be the compute shortage is what's driving it. Because today there's an absolute abundance of consumer compute, but when you look at enterprise top high-end compute, NVIDIA's high-end rigs, they're not prevalent. Everyone's fighting to get their hands on them. In fact, there's a wait list of months on the NVIDIA side. And so, as you see AI absolutely take off and just usage demands kick in, there isn't enough supply in the centralized space to meet that demand. So I think to me, that's one of the inflection points that's changing it. I'd say the other part is we're moving to a point quite soon where it's going to be absolutely zero cost or close to it to generate an image or a video. And so in that world, you're going to have an abundance of images and videos. And what that does is it actually pushes creators to the top. It pushes really well-produced content because you're otherwise stuck with just a wall of mess. And for us, it's always been artist first. And being able to prove it was created by a human on a blockchain is actually, I think, a really important part that is missing from where they're going here. But I'd say the third piece for me is it's not going to be solved by one individual. It's going to be solved by communities. And there are a number of just amazing initiatives at the moment that I think are doing a great job of pulling the disparate pieces together so that you have data protection in a decentralized environment, so that you can do training, so that you can do all aspects of it. Until all those pieces are in place, you just don't have the ecosystem that will scale. We can see it coming with all the effort and where it's going at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah. So what is the current state of the network? Like about how many GPUs are running it? What kind of jobs and like how heavily utilized is the network today?
Yeah, it's always a great thing. So we're doing about 750,000 frames rendered a month on average. First 5 months of this year. So that's a lot of rendering work. On the AI side, very little. We signed up 6 compute clients. They're all in various stages of integration. And the first one of those that we had was a company called Ionet. They've been sort of the furthest down the pipeline. They're probably the closest to bringing that on chain. So they are doing jobs on render nodes. However, we haven't completed to the point where it's part of the overall model. That's definitely coming. Yeah. So that's sort of a scale. Then the network is not fully utilized. In fact, on purpose, we want it to be scalable on demand as render jobs hit. So typically it's between 5 and 10%. We'd like to get that up to 50. And we've got this massive wait list of consumer GPUs who want on, given the premium you can generate on rendering. And our goal this year, particularly second half, is to use emissions to help drive that usage both on the compute side and on the rendering side, so that we can get that number up, and so we can drive a lot more nodes than we have today.
Yeah, so talk about that demand side a little bit, because one of the things that something like Helium is a great example of a network that built out a network, and for a year and a half there was functionally zero demand for the network. But now you look at their data, and they just switched over, I think a few days ago, to now over 50% of the data through the Helium mobile network is actually served by Helium hotspots, and like 48% is fallback to the T-Mobile backend.
Right.
How do you think about driving the demand side for the network?
So
who are the main buyers of this?
There's so many layers to that, because it's not just one segment. So when I go down the list, firstly on the Otoy Octane front, only a subset of the paid Octane users actually use the render network today. And
right, most are just licensing the software, right?
Part of these creator rewards are really to drive folks into it. But what you're missing is the team has actually done a lot in streamlining the interface so that it is easy and simple to do these in a way that was historically much more complex and multi-step. So trying to move it within the artist workflow. What I'd add on top of that is Redshift, another amazing GPU renderer, will be out of beta at some point this year, and when it is, we'll have access to the entire user base there to drive usage. So there's almost like a second wave coming after the Octane side. And then as you step out beyond this, the compute clients are all showing early signs of promise. There aren't any public stats, but the stuff I've seen on the node usage, I'm seeing small numbers but doubling, and I'm getting to a point where it could be quite exciting. So quite bullish about that. And then there's a proposal that Imad from Stability put out to the community a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
And what that proposal is when we look at the problem with LLMs and with diffusion models today, a big part of the problem is around your data being used to train these models without your permission. And for us, being artist friendly, that's an absolute no-no, right? And what the suggestion is to actually use the render network to generate 3D assets that are licensable, generate a large library of assets that aren't stolen from artists, but are either free use or in some royalty structure there for folks to at least start, and then to fine tune with their own data without it being contributed or being part of the problem. And I think that royalty stream is really interesting. The proposal hasn't been approved by the community, but for me, it brings on a third usage and a third revenue stream that could be as compelling as any of the other two if we get it right.
Interesting. So you guys, the network, the token, the contracts began on Ethereum. There's now Solana support. Talk a little bit about that process, where we are today, and kind of what the future of that is.
I like to say it's amazing how little we spend on that, which is all credit to Solana. For us, there was definitely a deep look into, do we run our own L1 or not? Should we be leveraging another platform? It was probably the most heated community proposal we've had, and rightly so, because it's kind of fundamental. But they settled on us moving to Solana, and the community has been absolutely amazing. As I look across it, Helium helped us, Wormhole helped us, many amazing projects stepped in and made it a seamless transition. Nice. The last piece really this year is the centralized exchanges listing the new token. And on that front, I get asked nonstop, and the real answer is it's not up to us, it's up to them. So we're just watching with interest, hopefully, for that transition to be done. But it's been great, and an amazing ecosystem has really welcomed us in a way I couldn't have believed.
Yeah, so that long-term vision is to continue supporting the Ethereum side as well?
Well, all of the activities moved onto the Solana side.
Oh, so it's just the token that's left.
Yeah, so the token persists.
Yeah.
And from our perspective, that's a smart contract that could continue forever. But all the value is really on the other side, all the emissions, all the rewards. So, our focus is there and not backwards.
Awesome. So if folks want to actually get, yeah, I know you mentioned there's a long wait list. If folks want to actually get started using the render network, either the actual rendering side, the compute side, the AI side, how can they get involved? Where can they start submitting jobs?
Yeah, so they can just go to the foundation website. We've opened up the waitlist for compute clients. So we can do general purpose AI training or whatever jobs our compute partners run on these nodes. There's also availability rewards for the folks who are there early because the volumes are not high at the start. So we're definitely trying to help seed the ecosystem and draw it up. So anyone with a qualifying GPU can sign up. And unfortunately, it needs to be a qualifying GPU because we're running AI jobs on it. So you've got to have reasonable bandwidth and reasonable compute. But if you have that, we'd welcome you joining and participating. And hopefully as these two scale, we'll be able to merge them and run render jobs on both. But regardless, it's a really good return for anyone's idle compute.
Awesome. Well, Trevor, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Telling us about a bit about render.
Yeah, thank you. Austin, appreciate it.
Thanks guys.